In an era ruled by silence and separation, one voice dared to speak boldly. Oscar Micheaux, the first black filmmaker, was more than a pioneer. He was a fearless critic of systemic racism, unafraid to tell the truth in the shadow of Jim Crow. This is his story. Oscar Micheaux was born on January 2nd, 1884, just as Jim Crow laws were tightening their grip across the American South. Oscar Micheaux entered a world where freedom was promised, but not fully granted. Though Oscar Micheaux was raised in Metropolis, Illinois, a northern town along the banks of the Ohio River, Oscar Micheaux was never far from the sting of racial inequality. His parents, formerly enslaved, worked tirelessly to instill in Oscar Micheaux the values of hard work, pride, and self-reliance, tools they hoped would help him rise above the barriers they had endured. At 17, Oscar Micheaux left his small Illinois hometown and moved to Chicago, where he initially shined shoes and worked in the meatpacking and steel industries. He eventually secured a position as a porter for the American railway system, a steady job that gave him the opportunity to travel, save money, and build relationships with wealthy individuals who would later help fund his filmmaking ventures. Despite the barriers of Jim Crow laws against blacks, Oscar Micheaux pushed forward, and in 1904, at the age of 20, Oscar Micheaux became a homesteader in South Dakota. There, in the wide-open plains, he faced isolation, harsh weather, and the deep challenges of survival. But it was also where Oscar Micheaux began to write, using words to process the hardship, loneliness, and racial injustice he experienced. Those writings became the seeds of Oscar Micheaux's first novels, including The Homesteader, where he explored race, identity, and self-determination. Even then, Oscar Micheaux was dreaming of something bigger, a platform to share the truth, his way. Oscar Micheaux's debut novel, The Homesteader, addressed race relations and identity. When Hollywood refused to adapt his work, Micheaux took matters into his own hands, launching his career as America's first major black filmmaker. Over the course of his remarkable career, Oscar Micheaux went on to write and publish 7 novels and produce over 44 films, many of which boldly explored themes of racial injustice, social mobility, and the experiences of black people during the Jim Crow era. Oscar Micheaux's groundbreaking work not only challenged Hollywood's exclusion of black voices, but also laid the foundation for future generations of black filmmakers, proving that African American stories deserved a place on the big screen. Oscar Micheaux's Within Our Gates 1920 was a direct and courageous response to D.W. Griffith's 1915 film The Birth of a Nation, which portrayed the Ku Klux Klan as heroic defenders of white civilization and perpetuated harmful stereotypes about black people. Griffith's film, while technically innovative for its time, glorified white supremacy, justified racial violence, and vilified black men as threats to society, fueling racial hatred and contributing to a resurgence of Klan activity across the United States. In response to D.W. Griffith's racist propaganda, The Birth of a Nation, Oscar Micheaux released Within Our Gates, a powerful rebuttal that dared to confront the lies perpetuated by mainstream media. Griffith's film glorified the Ku Klux Klan and distorted the realities of Reconstruction, fueling racial hostility and reinforcing harmful stereotypes about African Americans. Oscar Micheaux's response was not merely a counter-narrative, it was a bold and unapologetic challenge to the systemic oppression and racial violence that plagued black communities. While mainstream media upheld white supremacy and silenced the voices of the oppressed, Oscar Micheaux's films unapologetically exposed the harsh realities of lynching, the failures of the justice system, and the economic exploitation faced by African Americans. Through powerful visual storytelling, Within Our Gates depicted the strength, resilience, and moral courage of Black people in the face of unimaginable adversity. Micheaux shattered the dehumanizing myths promoted by Griffith, offering instead a portrait of Black communities where dignity, education, and self-determination thrived despite overwhelming odds. Oscar Michaux's work was not just about exposing injustice, it was about reclaiming the narrative. He highlighted the vital role of Black women as educators, leaders, and agents of change, offering a vision of hope and empowerment. His films provided an alternative to the harmful portrayals that had long dominated American cinema, showing that the Black experience was not defined by victimhood, but by resilience and the pursuit of justice. In a time when the voices of Black filmmakers were marginalized and excluded from the mainstream, Oscar Micheaux carved out a space where authentic Black stories could be told. His films challenged audiences to confront uncomfortable truths and inspired future generations of filmmakers to use cinema as a tool for social change. Through Within Our Gates and his subsequent work, Oscar Micheaux not only answered the birth of a nation, he redefined the power of film as a platform for truth, justice, and the unyielding spirit of the Black community. Oscar Micheaux directed and produced 44 films in his lifetime, each one a bold statement that challenged the limits imposed by a society unwilling to hear the truth. But his journey was not without resistance. Time and again, in the shadow of Jim Crow, Micheaux's work repeatedly faced harsh censorship. Newspapers banned Oscar Micheaux's films, and critics worked tirelessly to silence his voice. Yet for every door that closed, Oscar Micheaux carved a new path, pushing boundaries both on and off the screen. As the industry transitioned to sound, Oscar Micheaux embraced the change. He gave voice, literally and figuratively, to Black Americans silenced by Jim Crow. Oscar Micheaux produced the first Black feature sound film, The Exile, in 1931.
Really? Something wonderful.
Wonderful where?
Sure thing. Now listen, I keep an eye open, and at the first opportunity, we'll slip away.
And then Oscar Micheaux produced the movie Birthright in 1939.
I didn't do you right.
Why did you turn down my proposition, Mr. Tomwitt, after we had agreed on drawing up the papers?
Well, I had to do it, Peter.
Why, Mr. Tomwitt?
A white neighbor of mine wanted me to.
Who, Mr. Tomwitt?
Henry Hooker talked me into it, Peter, to the mean trick.
Both of Oscar Micheaux's sound films, The Exile in 1931 and then Birthright in 1939, were radical in their realism. Nevertheless, distributing race films in a Jim Crow market still came with constant resistance.
Micheaux was one of the most successful Black producers in the business. He knew the distribution, he knew the fundraising bit, he knew the public from coast to coast. He knew to the penny how much to spend on a production because he knew what he could get back. And that is why it made him such a genius in the business.
He wanted to show beautiful people. He felt that they were showing so many ugly colored people on it, and he resented that. And he said they acted as if we didn't have any pretty colored girls. And I remember him saying once in a rehearsal, he said, you always see beautiful white children, but when you see colored children, they're not colored children, they're pickaninnies. And that was his thinking. He said, why?
Jim Crow laws didn't just govern the South, they infected every corner of American life. Yet, Oscar Micheaux found ways to produce over 44 films, traveling across segregated states, telling stories others were afraid to touch. Oscar Micheaux's films planted seeds of dignity, resistance, and pride that inspired a generation to believe their stories mattered. Oscar Micheaux didn't just make movies, he made history. In the shadow of Jim Crow, he forged light. His legacy is alive in every film that dares to tell the truth. Thank you for watching History's Gifted Past, Present, and Future. Subscribe for more stories of inspiration and purpose.